And the amount of people I'm already seeing putting the league table on their timeline. We're in the top 6.
What do you got for me, boss?
I tell you what, I was spoilt for choice this week, Ben. As we said, last week in the Premier League, it was fairly predictable. This week, there was some really intriguing results, lots of goals scored. And let me just clarify to people that are new to this thing that we're doing in the Matt's moment. We're going to pick out one team and one result each week that we look at. It can sometimes be positive, sometimes be a negative. We had a negative last week with Everton. I'm sure we can give them a mention later. But let's do a positive on Nottingham Forest, who have gone 4 points from 2 games so far. A really encouraging start. And it wasn't just that, it was the manner of the victory. As I say, plenty of big games this week. Villa-Arsenal was a big game at the top. Fulham-Leicester, a big game potentially down the bottom. And I also think Southampton-Forest in the same category as that, because last week we saw Southampton lose 1-0 to 10-man Newcastle, and it was one of those where they're kicking themselves. They could have got something playing 10 men for such a long period of time. If they're going to stay up in this division, they need to take points at home to teams that are also in the bottom half. Forest last season and the season before haven't been great away from home in the Premier League. They pick up most of their points at the City Ground, and it would have been a disaster for Forest to lose this game because it had just been 1 point from 2 games against Bournemouth and Southampton, and winning this game 1-0 puts them on 4 points, which is actually the best start they've had to a Premier League after 2 games since they've been back. Interestingly enough, in the last 2 seasons, they've lost their opening game and then won their second game. This time around, they've drawn their opening game and won their second game. And as I say, it was the manner of the victory. Yes, we can look at the possession here, where, as you'd expect, Southampton well on top, 65% possession, Forest 35%, but it's what you do with the ball. The XG numbers reflect that. 0.14 for Southampton, 2.45 for Nottingham Forest. The only thing I will say, as a slight negative for Forest, is it could have been more comfortable and really should have been. If they'd have walked away with a 0-0, it would have been 2 points dropped, in my opinion. Morgan Gibbs-White gets the goal. Bit of a scramble for that one, 20 minutes from the end. And I think it's a sign of things to come for Forest. It's a good win. It gets them going. And look how much attacking quality they've got there with Alanga, Wood, Owanyi coming back, Callum Hudson-Odoi. I think it's going to really start to come together and could be a good season for Forest.
Totally echo what you've said. We're going to talk about Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton a bit more later. As an Ipswich fan, it's worrying for me to see a team such as Nottingham Forest, who, if you're down the bottom there, they're one of the ones, rightly or wrongly, don't take this the wrong way for us, they're one of the ones that you might think you've got a chance of reeling in. So, Matt, when you see first game for Forest away from home at one of the promoted teams, and as you've mentioned, not just to win, but to win so comfortably when you look at the underlying numbers, that's going to give... Because if you are a Forest fan, I know they want the expectations to be more than just finish 17th, but you do want to be going into these kind of head-to-heads with the teams expected down the way. You've got to go and win them and then build on that. And then if you can take points off teams in the middle, all of a sudden you start to be climbing and climbing. Can I throw one slight caveat in just as a debate point, because we can't just sit here and say, yeah, Forest, great. Have they had a little bit of a soft start with Bournemouth at home and Southampton away? I mean, I know they've leveraged it brilliantly and got 4 points, but can you make the argument it's going to get trickier for them?
It will, yes. It's the Premier League, and like you say, if you speak about Ipswich, it doesn't get much harder than Liverpool at home and Man City away for your first 2 games. So yes, naturally, things will balance themselves out. Forest have got to go away to Man City. Ipswich will be playing other teams down near the bottom. Next week, Forest have got Wolves, which I do think, once again, especially after what we saw with Wolves, is a good opportunity.
Nuno going back as well.
Yeah, it's at the City Ground, actually. But yes, Nuno against his former team, and I won't give my prediction away just yet, but you'd fancy Forest to be favourites after the previous results. And yeah, speaking of Nuno, the cause for optimism for me with Forest is I was a big fan of Steve Cooper. I really did like him, but maybe on reflection, his dismissal has maybe brought Forest to a point where they can now move forwards. And this is the first summer transfer window Nuno has had. They've had lots of incomings: Jota Silva, Milenkovic, Carlos Miguel, lots of players coming through the door. And I really like the attacking lineup here. So, yes, they've had a, on paper, favourable start. But I think with all the things put together, there's room for optimism, because I don't see them really getting hit with a points deduction this season. I can't say that with certainty, but I think that's...
Doesn't look likely now, does it?
No, I think it's the outgoings, because they sold the likes of Lacademos, Niakate, I think it was Mangala as well. So they brought in a bit of money for those players. So, yeah, you look at it, a good start can really shape your season. If they can pick up 10 points within their first 5 games, then we're thinking to ourselves, will they be involved in the battle? Because you're looking at the teams that have come up: Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester. They've got to target who are they bringing down. Is it going to be Everton, who are always there and thereabouts? Is it going to be Forest, who've been there for the last couple of seasons? It's going to have to be one of those, maybe a Brentford possibly, but they've started fairly well. It's about who's going to fill that void if a newly promoted team stays up, and Forest will be saying, look, we don't want it to be us, and hopefully more than that, they can stay up more than comfortably this season. So I think it's been a very encouraging start.
Yeah, we'll clip that one out for Matt's channel, but probably what we need to hear, Matt, I think we need to hear from the Forest fans in the comments, just on, I think, where the confidence levels are, how they're ranking the excellent points total against the opponents they've faced so far. But I think we're going to have some positive comments from Forest fans, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I follow quite a few Forest fans on social media. I've got quite a few Forest fans friends as well. And the amount of people I'm already seeing putting the league table on their timeline. Look at us. We're in the top 6. It is 2 games. I completely agree with what you've said. And they are an optimistic bunch, which is not always a bad thing, but it can sometimes mean that the expectations are maybe higher than where they should be. But that's all relative to what each individual thinks. But yes, very good point. Forest fans, do share your thoughts down below.